Your mama told me read the book of Job. They should have called it the book of soul. This is a line from one of the most powerful songs I've ever heard in my entire life by Ab-Soul on his album Control System. If you ain't heard it, you gotta go listen to it. And what Ab-Soul displays in this song is exactly what we talk about on this channel every Sunday. And that's the fact that the Bible is really just, or the world perhaps, is really just a bunch of stories in the Bible rehashing themselves over and over and over again. And the reason why this is because the Bible has every archetype of human being in it. Every person that you met, every person that you're going to come across, I can guarantee you that there's a story, a lesson, or whatever about that type of person and their journey in the Bible. Ab-Soul understands this as well, and he displays this in this song called The Book of Soul. And before we get to breaking down the song, let's break down the story of Job, right? And so I don't get on here and just start rambling a whole bunch. I basically went and found a really good summary of the book of Job for people who haven't read it yet. At the beginning of the book of Job is a scene in heaven where Satan stands before God. God asks Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And Satan immediately accuses Job, a righteous man, of fearing God only because God had prospered him. So essentially he's saying, the only reason Job believes in you, the only reason Job follows you is because you've treated him well. It's because you haven't put him through any type of situation where he could lose his faith. He goes on to say, strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. God grants Satan limited permission to put Job to the test. Why do the righteous suffer? This is the question raised after Job loses his family, his wealth, and his health. So essentially what this becomes is Satan basically saying, if you tarnish this man, if you strike everything this man owns, he's going to curse you. The only reason he celebrates you is because you haven't cursed him yet. So God basically says, well, we can prove it right now. Out of everything except him, you can pretty much just destroy, you have permission to tarnish everything else. His possessions, his all of that. And I can guarantee you he will stick by my side, right? So he has a bunch of friends, or he has a few friends that go and approach him through this situation, right? And they insist his suffering is punishment for sin in his life. Job, though, remains devoted to God through all of this and contends that his life has not been one of sin, right? A fourth man tells Job he needs to humble himself and submit to God's use of trials to purify his life. Finally, after all these trials and tribulations of losing his children, losing his wealth, the things that he's gained throughout his life, Job finally questions God himself and learns valuable lessons about the sovereignty of God and his need to totally trust in the Lord, right? Job eventually is then restored to health, happiness, and prosperity beyond his earlier state. So what does this tell us? This tells us that through all your tribulations, through all your trials, through all the things that you go through, you got to be able to trust that God got it, that God has it figured out, that these things are happening because they're supposed to happen. That faith in God gives you clarity. It gives you peace through tribulation, right? Now, what Ab-Soul does in the most beautiful way possible, I'm talking like, man, just thinking about this song, if I wasn't, I would have really rapped this song verse for verse if I really wanted to, right? Like in this video, because it's that beautiful. But I really just got some lines to summarize what it's about. So Ab-Soul makes this song about how he has suffered from the very beginning of his life. Here are some lines to break that down. He says, I came into this hurtful earth in perfect health, caught Steven Johnson syndrome when I was 10 years old. Internal and external fever, 80% fatality rate at that time. Ain't that some shit? So he's saying that when he was Up until he was 10 years old, everything was fine. He was in perfect health. Whatever. When he turned 10, he caught this disease that destroys the eyes. It destroys the sight. And usually 80% of people that catch this disease pass away. Now, this disease is extremely rare. So you gotta think, for somebody to be that young, for somebody to be like, this is something that is going to have him questioning things like, out of everybody in the world, why am I going through this? Why am I going through this suffering and this pain? Right? He says, severe pink eye, my eyes swollen shut for like 2 or 3 months. It's still bright as fuck. Oh, and I even lost my lip skin, grew back darker than its original pigment. Skin disfigured from boils and blisters, unidentifiable by my little sister. So Ab-Soul was going through this time of losing his vision, and not only losing his vision, the pigment around his lips turning completely black, turning blacker than they usually are, and his skin developing boils and blisters. And the interesting thing about Job that this summary doesn't really break down, Job also was going through this time where he had boils and blisters on every inch of his body. Whenever he moved, whenever he sweated, whenever he would feel the pain of these rashes and these blisters all over his body. And when you really think about it, that's exactly what Ab-Soul is describing here. Steven Johnson syndrome is essentially giving him these boils and blisters all over his body that, imagine just touching something or being touched by something and experiencing pain much greater than the average person would, especially when for 10 years you never experienced this before. You see what I'm saying? The parallels are incredible. It's crazy, right? So he continues to talk about his suffering, the things that he's been through that are, many would say are just worse than your average human being, right? And then he gets to the point in the song where he starts talking about this woman that he met. And he met this woman through high school, right? While all of this stuff is going on, while he can barely see, he got blisters all over his body, the pigment around his lips is changing and all this different stuff. So of course he probably went through ridicule. Of course he probably was ostracized. Of course the women that he was trying to get with probably never even took him seriously, because this is what, that's how it is in high school. I mean, I got made fun of high school for having big lips, not even high school, middle school, for having big lips and having a big nose. So I can only imagine what Ab-Soul had to go through, right? We fast forward, this girl that he had the feels for, right? This girl who was probably pursued by many other guys in the high school took a liking to him, right? So of course he would love this girl. Of course he would start to build a bond with this girl, somebody who seen him and still was able to love him, right? And understand. And unfortunately, through going on with this girl, right, and going through life with this girl, she makes music, and all this different stuff. They go through the typical relationship stuff, the mistakes, he says, I did some things, you did some things, we always got back together. The only way that we can make it work was work together. 7 whole years. It was supposed to end with our grandkids. All of a sudden you're like, wait. This is taking an interesting turn. What you mean it was supposed to end with our grandkids? Y'all broke up? But no. That's not what happens. And he goes on to explain. I'm such a nice guy. Why, Lord? Why, Lori? Why you had to take her from me? Guess he needed your angel face for all of heaven to see. Your picture still in my mirror and it's so scary. I swear I still ain't looked at your obituary. There's a reason why, even though this is one of my favorite songs of all time, it's so hard to listen to, because he's talking about a woman that passed away. This girl that he loved, she passed away, right? And then you go to find on this girl is a Lori Joe, somebody who ended up jumping off of a tower and taking her own life. And they went through the music industry together. They went on this music journey with each other. You see what I'm saying? Even being totally involved with TDE, the both of them. He then goes on to say, and as much as I want to cower, bid the mic adieu, and fall off a fucking tower trying to find you, I gotta stay because I remember that day I looked you in the face and told you nothing can stop me, not even you. So now his will for living, right? He's thinking about committing suicide. He's thinking about leaving this earth so he can go find the love of his life that he lost, that committed suicide. He wants to go find the love of his life. You see what I'm saying? He wants to go to still be close to her, to still hold her. And he can't because she's gone. You feel what I'm saying? He says, stick to the plan. I'll meet you at our spot. If reincarnation is true, oh man, this right here. Stick to the plan. I'll meet you at our spot. If reincarnation is true, we don't get too lost. Even if you forget me and everything we left behind, I never lied. I love you in a place where there's no space and time. Imagine the pain of finding a woman that loves you, finding a woman that sees you and stays with you, even respects your journey because she have her own journey as a musician. Everything that he went through as a child, like all these different things that he's going through, to lose that woman, and not only lose her to suicide. That's gotta be a pain that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, that I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Right. Can you still listen to that record today?
I can't. I couldn't. I didn't listen after I recorded it. That was it. In all honesty, I cried through the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Me and Punch did it. But you know, like I said, it's one of those things that I had to do. And so, you know, that's what we doing here. You know, this is about giving your testimony, whatever you've been through, and the people that we respect. Whether you rap or whatever you do, it's about people who overcome the most and don't stop no matter what type of roadblocks coming their way. Yeah. No hurdles are coming your way. Right. I told my girl that I was gonna do this. I told her that. And that's what I gotta do still.
And it still ties back to Job. This is immense suffering. This is out of this world suffering. These are things that he still lives with. This condition, these things that he still lives with, that he still has to walk every day and you know what I'm saying, and face. You feel what I'm saying? And this is what we got to understand when we look at the book of Soul and we look at the book of Job, right? Often we wonder why God allows something and we question or doubt God's goodness without seeing the full picture. And that's because as humans, we are limited, right? The book of Job teaches us to trust God under all circumstances. That means even when you're triggered, the things that trigger you come up and you want to crash out and you want to boom and all this different stuff, and or turn away from God and boom, to still trust in the Lord, to still trust in this relationship that is, and these things that are happening that is for the greater good. We must trust God because we must trust God not only when we do not understand, but because we do not understand. And this is something that I've seen that I thought was a perfect description of what the overall story of Job is supposed to represent for you. Job was the man who suffered and was tested, and right when everything was about to go to shit, he was blessed with double of everything that he had in the past. And that came through perseverance and fighting and surviving to stay alive and keeping that faith in the Lord regardless. So then you turn around, you look at Ab-Soul. Ab-Soul has suffered and been tested in his eyes as well. Even when he did try to take his own life, he survived. When Ab-Soul, that could be seen as questioning God, right? When Ab-Soul decided to take his own life and take his life in his own hands, that probably was the lack of faith in believing in where God is guiding him, right? And we don't know his personal life, so we can't even start to put all this stuff together. But I would like to say, if Ab-Soul hasn't gotten to the point where he received double of what God is going to give him, then I believe that that's coming. And I would like to theorize and just have, just have an imagination and say that time is coming. Even with the way I listen to how Ab-Soul is rapping now, you can see that spirit, that soul, that fire is reignited. Even the music that's been coming out, Do What Thou Wilt these days and all that stuff, he's still making the music. The music is still, the ability is still there. But I do notice a distinct difference in the way he's rapping on Control System with the fire and the spirit and all that, and the way that he's delivering on Do What Thou Wilt and these days, right? But even when we get to Herbert, you start to notice that he's leaning back in that direction. He's leaning back in that trust and going there. I think songs like the I gotta do better, him talking about no matter what, I gotta take all this suffering and make something of it. I gotta stand tall. I gotta do what I gotta do. And that's why, regardless of quote unquote success, because that's subjected to whatever, I think Ab-Soul's story, Ab-Soul's art, Ab-Soul vision, all the way from Control System to all of this, right? It's still a part of the overlining and the complete story of what Ab-Soul is going to be by its conclusion. And we don't know what is, only he knows. You feel what I'm saying? Only he knows what he's going through and what he's experiencing. But I would love to say that it sounds like that fire is reignited in the things that he's been releasing. Even we talk about the freestyles that have been coming out. You feel what I'm saying? That going back to the roots, just getting on beats and body and shit. It just feel like he getting back into that calling. You feel what I'm saying? And the fact that TDE is dominating in the way they dominating and all these different things are coming together. I would love to believe that Ab-Soul is recognized that surviving that fall was his second chance. Surviving that fall was his start to receiving all of the blessings that he will be receiving. Even if he lost his faith somewhere along the way, I believe that his season of the doubling, the tripling, or whatever is coming to him. And maybe it already has, but I would like to believe that at the end of the day, his conclusion, whatever it is that his heart and his spirit and his align and where he is supposed to be when he's aligned is supposed to take place. I believe that it's probably happened behind the scenes, or it's gonna happen to where we can see the fruits of all the labor. And when I say the fruits of the labor, I mean his survival, the fact that he's still here, the fact that he's still giving his art, the fact that he's still giving his message and still working on his craft and still trying through all the things that he's been through. It's honestly just one of the most beautiful stories, and it ties all the way back to the Book of Soul, and it's beautiful. You feel what I'm saying? And the fact that he's able to create this song and relay it and parallel it to the Book of Job, and Ab-Soul was one of the guys that started to open my mind to having these perspectives and these, you feel me? Like that whole era of Control System was just life-changing for me. And to see it, to be able to get on here and talk about it with y'all and break down this word of God and break down what Ab-Soul brings to the table is beautiful. And I wish and hope the best for Ab-Soul. And I hope that his message continues to inspire, continues to go out there. People continue to go back to Control System and appreciate what he put through on that project. So yeah, that's pretty much the end. I loved making this video. You feel what I'm saying? This is one of my favorite ones. Like, comment, subscribe, especially if you're new here, especially if you've been here. Every single Sunday we do videos just like this. And yeah, I'm just grateful for artists like Ab-Soul, artists like Kendrick Lamar, artists like Tupac, artists like all the different artists who have taught me something and opened my mind and expanded it. And I'm grateful for the Bible. I'm grateful for the stories of Job. I'm grateful for the stories of David and Saul, the story of Jesus and Noah, and all these different things that give me so much more clarity to my life and so much more clarity to or humility, and noticing that even though you got to be humble enough to recognize that you're this small of a speck in the grand scheme of things, to be okay with that and allow God to guide you. Allow your faith in God to guide you as well. And yeah, thank you, Absol. Thank you, TDE. You know what I mean? Thank you, hip hop. Thank you, God. Thank you, Job. Thank you, everybody who suffered and persevered in order to prove to the rest of the world that that's all it is. It's suffering. And that's a part of the journey. Once again, like, comment, subscribe, especially if you're new here, especially if you've been here. We do this every single Sunday. And I already got my next Sunday one planned out. You feel what I'm saying? So I can't wait. I'm going to catch y'all, man. Have a good day.